I'm your host, DBJ, and today we are going to delve into the Day of the Dead. And of course, we are pulling this from a real world connotations, but for our tabletop role playing experiences, maybe this is something that might interest you on this continued series on the day of. So, get your favorite beverage, release your mind, take a couple of deep breaths during the intro, and we'll get right back into it. So this is another one of the opportunities for us to kind of take a second look at something. So in our previous discussions, we had talked a little bit about the idea of like the good necromancer and how I was being very cheeky about how like necromancers aren't liked because if you're walking around with the animated dead, people of other people's children or their grandparents, it's not looked at highly. But something else that comes to mind when it comes to this concept of the Day of the Dead and the afterlife and celebrations or solemn occasions with the passing of loved ones and friends and family made me think about uh, specifically using the iconography of the Day of the Dead and how, on one context, culturally or whatever, something can be seen as um, uh, dark and disrespectful and such, whereas in a different societal change, the traditions might be a little bit more joyful. And when our characters go to distant lands to encounter individuals, they may initially think of something being off or odd, and then of course our interactions with it can change. And you can basically flip the script on your player characters and go, yeah, what you were thinking was going to happen isn't exactly the thing. And I thought we could use this as a jumping off point for the Day of the Dead. So, um, this is what I'm talking about. Yeah, how about, and this is all already getting comments from our co-hosts here, but yeah, how about friendly dead that come and talk to you like Shades or Wraith the Oblivion? Yeah, I love Wraith the Oblivion. The idea of the Day of the Dead, and I'll read this off here. I'm not necessarily to share it out, but the Day of the Dead and the Spanish, oh, I'm going to butcher this, Dia de los Muertos is a holiday traditionally celebrated on November 1st and 2nd. So we're a little bit early, but it has a much less solemn tone and is portrayed as a holiday of joyful celebration rather than mourning. The multi day holiday involves family and friends gathering to pay respects and to remember friends and family members who have died. These celebrations can take a humorous tone as celebrants remember funny events and anecdotes about the departed. Now, in a lot of times in media, movies, television shows, there's always like everyone's dressed in black. There's often rain, which symbolizes the tears that people have. There's soft, solemn music in the background and such. But sometimes we don't get to see, the reality of situation. I know I've been to plenty of funerals and saying goodbye to the departed, and there's lots of like remembering the good times and joking and having like a joyful remembrance of it and not feeling guilty about having the laughs and such, and the good time feelings and speaking aloud to those people that have passed, like, man, I remember the times we had together and it was the funniest and it was the greatest and I always remember. And those remembrances sometimes even in the dark clothing and the low tones and such. There are cultures, especially here, the Day of the Dead, using this as an example. A lot of our southern states here in the states, especially uh, exemplified by New Orleans, where there's upbeat music and such, and using that to twist the way we see things in our tabletop games can really open up some like adventure ideas and such. For example, what if there was someone that passed away, a ghost or a wraith or something, and the family's like asking the player characters, like, could you talk to them, please? That I know they passed away, but their spirit's here, and they really have something important to say. They could be the adventure giver, the I was killed. Could you please find my killer? Hey, I passed away, and I'm the only one that knows the combination to unlock the secret passage or to find the lost treasure, and I'm willing to give it to you, but you got to look out for my family, kind of thing. There might be NPCs that have passed and the player characters are able to at least one more time talk to them. Often player characters, the murder hobo of the of role playing is a character that's always an orphan. They have no home, they have no ties, but maybe uh maybe the idea is that the players maybe reconnect to their lost loved ones who've always been murder killed by some kind of horde or something in their small village, and they're able to talk to them again at least one more time. Or maybe this is a seasonal thing, or a yearly event, or a special event when people from a particular region all gather back together again to talk to the lost dead. And depending on your world, whether it's really their spirits come back from a long distance, or they are continually reliving painful experiences, maybe this is an opportunity for mere mortals to alleviate that, at least temporarily. Hey, it's up to us to remember them and to bring them joy in the afterlife. Otherwise, they'll just be in torturous pain for another 1001 days or something. But if we don't get together and pour a drink and stuff and invite them, they don't get to alleviate themselves. This might even be uh, a tradition that fuels deities and such. Like, hey, it's not just their spirit, but it's also the energy from their family and friends that fuels the deities into the next world. um, Drew says, I hope people will dress in white for my funeral. My Asian side prefers that. Ah, didn't know you had an Asian side. That's awesome. Yet the colors that people wear, you often, like I said, a lot of times in media, they tend to default to a specific look to get across a story idea, which is often dark colors, rain, whatever. But I mean, the symbols that people use in funerals, like here in the Midwest, there's we have like a memory board where you have like people bring in photographs and things from all over, little bits of like not just photographs but objects that were important to that person, and display them everywhere. People will arrive in uniforms and will wear, not uniforms, but well, yes, uniforms, but will wear clothing related to their best experiences or relationship with that person. I went to a funeral where uh, well, I've been to a number of biker funerals. It's leather vests and jackets the whole time. Another guy went to a funeral, passed away, and he was an auto head, and he loved wearing uh, Chuck Taylors, and everybody wore sneakers and these, workman shirts and T-shirts and stuff. So, yeah, it's always, I think, just embracing the fact that people don't say goodbye to their loved ones the same way everywhere, and so yeah. Now, let's see. Hunt says in a Dia los Muertos, not some kind of ancient pre-Christian or Mayan tradition that was assimilated into modern day Mexican tradition. If I'm not mistaken, it was, and I think it goes on to say that Mexican academics are divided on whether the festivity has genuine indigenous prehistoric roots or whether it's a 20th century rebranded version of a Spanish tradition developed during the presidency of uh, Lazaro Cardenas to encourage Mexican nationalism through an Aztec identity. And that's another thing too, that well, I can't make a judgment on whether people believe or don't believe something, but throughout time and history, as people, cultures merge with each other, whether they like it or not, who's to say that a death rite passage hasn't, an example with, I'm going to make up something fictional, but who's to say that a as we get closer to Halloween and a lot of our holidays, heck, even Christmas and such, that uh, it's it changes over time based on, distance and the merging of cultures. That just because it's changed doesn't mean it's authentic, right? I think sometimes we get, I joke with the mispronunciation. There is no rule for pronunciations. It is consensus driven, right? If everybody believes that's the thing, then that is the thing. Even if it's changed, the new thing becomes the thing. And there really are no dividing lines when it comes to things like that. So, for example, um, you could have a an extremely medieval styled world, but maybe in a particular section of the nation, it when they say goodbye to their loved ones, it could be extremely tribal or something. Nobody wears armor. There's none of the revelry or the banners are given or whatever. They strip down and they bring out their ancient weaponry and iconography. The music changes, and the PCs might be like, "What's going on here? This has nothing to do with the culture we're in." And they're like, "Yeah, but this goes back in the day, and that's how we do it." Yep. Chase is like, "Oh, awesome biker funerals. Oh, biker funerals are loud. They're obnoxious. There's alcohol. It's all kinds of things. Biker funerals usually, not usually, if there is a casket of sorts, people will come from all over and they will bring like, favorite bottle of alcohol, pour one out, and they'll top it off and leave it in there. They'll bring biker patches. One guy brought a broken spoke, like a piece of equipment that broke off of a bike because they had an accident with this person, and blah blah blah, and they'll leave it in the in the casket. Like, military funerals are a big thing. That's This is very somber, but when someone who has been in the military passes, it's a tradition for to have, what's the song, taps. I know I'm saying it, doing it incorrectly. Anyway, there are individuals who will travel hundreds of miles, and we had that happen. So I go to a funeral related to people in my wife's side of the family, and gentleman, hard times, on and off homeless. Found out it was military. Call goes out. Two gentlemen drove up on their motorcycles from Tennessee, so it's about a 250, 300-mile ride, I believe they did. They did it overnight. Two gentlemen. They show up, biker leathers, the whole 9 yards. They go in the back. They switch into their military uniforms. They bring out the recording of the military. And I'm calling it taps, but that's not the name of the song. And my brain is just farting right now. So they play the military song that goes along with the folding of the flag, which they place over the casket. They fold it up. They give it to. I mean, they did the whole thing, and it was just like these guys were. It was basically overnight. Like, listen, you need to show up, and they said, "Yeah, hell yeah, we're coming." And it is, if you've never seen a military procession simply done by just two gentlemen, it's very honorable. Like, it's a awe inspiring, the simplicity of it, and that's done in movies a lot too. And the reason is because it really does establish itself as like a saying goodbye to someone. And so in fantasy, we often have like the clerics. We have ourselves characters that are connected to the divine, and we often downplay the importance of the talents and skills that and connections that characters have. A cleric that comes into a community, and the people have maybe had a devastating event happen, like a flood or a fire or disease or famine, or a cleric comes into a place and it's the day of the harvest or something. Those characters aren't just hanging out in the background. Like the people in the community are going to say, you need to step up and say something to to assuage the feelings that people have, to embrace those feelings or memories or whatever. And I think players, I think in fifth edition they tried to emulate that with the backgrounds. Now it's kind of like faded away and it doesn't really matter as much. But I think we're losing something a little bit for that. And that's all. Hey, Heathen's like, yeah, can't chat tonight, but listening, no problem. And I'm glad we can put you to sleep with my dulcet tones. That's funny. I love that. Traditions are just peer pressure by dead people anyway. Drood and Fuzz. I love it. But why not? Maybe there is a tradition that happens that where the people living are like, why are we doing this? Um, we as human beings, we go out of our way to try to recover uh, the physical dead bodies of people that have passed for closure, despite the fact that um, in a dark common sense kind of way, the body doesn't matter anymore. But for many people, it does. Military, no one left behind. They will go out of their way to recover dead bodies. The during uh, plane crashes and sinking ships and such, they will try to. You'll hear in the media that rescue efforts are going now. It's a recovery mission, and how hard it is to recover the dead and burning buildings and such, and yet we do it anyway. And we spend a lot of money to care for the dead, just as in ancient times. Hey, we're going to need a couple of thousand of you slaves and indentured servants to build a monument to this person that's probably going to die at some point, to allow them to travel to a transition to another world and such, and maybe come back. Which also brings up the idea of, we have ourselves our lowest level undead. We've got zombies and skeletons and a couple of things in between. But as we move up the undead levels, we we often lose sight of the fact of who passed away or what were the circumstances where they passed away. So when there's a ghost, does the ghost look like the most horrible thing in the world because that's what they looked like before they passed? Or is it a ghost of a noble that still has that noble bearing and they are a noble in the afterlife, coming back with an entourage or something? I mean, there are things in between a white sheeted ghost that we can play with for our role playing games. For maybe there is a grand noble that's like, you know what, PC, you're blood related to me. I'm trying to look out for you. And the PC's like, please don't send the banshees nearby. I have to keep making saving throws, you know? And the undead is like, no, I'm coming back. I'm coming here to send you on a mission. I can't affect anything in the physical world, but you can. And I'm going to show you the key to unlock the blah, blah, blah. And, the MacGuffin's going to be around the corner, that kind of thing. Drew says the orcs in my, I'm going to butcher this, Weitstan's setting have the habit to eat their dead, basically to keep them in the family. And we, in our modern context, there are I mean, there are the rites of the passing of the dead that today we would find reprehensible, but in other periods of time they would. Um, I remember seeing. Let me see if I could find this article, and I should have looked it up for. Uh, top, let's put this top 10. Let's see, death. Uh, There are unusual death rituals from around the world, and you know, when it comes to role playing games, I think we can pull from this. So, and I haven't. This isn't the same article, but I remember looking this up because I was trying to make attempting to make a random chart of sorts. Come on. What the heck happened? There we go. Ah, I see. It slowed up. Around the world. Share this. No, I want to share this window out. Thank you. Mm-mm. Um, let's see. Shice, the body is boring. The soul is what I'd like to see. Unfortunately, I've never had a paranormal experience of any kind, no matter how hard I try. Fucking reality fucking sucks. I love that. Damn it, I want to see a spirit, right? I don't know. There's something weird about like I kind of like to be visited by a spirit. I mean, there's a little morbidity to that, but it's like I kind of like to see it. You know, even if it's scary, it's like proof, and I'd be like, sweet, I shat my pants. But on the other hand, it would be kind of cool to talk to people that have crossed over, even if they could answer one question. Which, on the Day of the Dead, maybe that is a thing, right? Hey, the elder of the community passed away. I don't know, three turns of the seasons ago or something, and we need to know. We really need to know what's going on. Uh, Drew says there's a great YouTube channel, Ask a Mortician. She speaks about lots of different cultural practices from around the world. I hadn't thought about looking that up, but yeah, I mean, and some of the strange, what we air quote strange, because I'm not making any value judgments about that, but there are both practical and uh, religious and traditional things about death rites from around the world. So let's see, the Sati, also spelled Suti, is a Hindu practice in which a recently widowed woman is burned to death on her husband's funeral pyre. This is either done voluntarily or by the use of force. Other forms of sati also exist, such as being buried alive and drowning. This practice was particularly popular in southern India and among the higher castes of society. It wasn't only there. Sati is considered the highest expression of wifely devotion to her dead husband. The practice was outlawed in 1827, but it still has still occasionally occurred in some parts of India. I'm I'm going to say, even though this is considered a tradition, I would say this is kind of a worldly thing where someone like falls upon the deceased one's body because of their devotion, kind of thing, which is, maybe that's why the spirit of someone still hangs around. So anyway, this is mortuary totem poles. Okay, let's see. Totem poles refer to the tall cedar poles with multiple figures carved by Native Americans of the Pacific Northwest. Mortuary totem poles, especially those of the Haida Haida people, have a cavity on top, which is used to hold a burial box containing the remains of a chief or important person. These remains are placed in the box a year after the death. The box is hidden from view by a frontal board, which is carved or painted with a lineage crest and placed across the front. The shape and design of the board will give it the appearance of a large crest. Oh, pop-ups. Um, the I'm going to move back up to this image here. Um, the totem pole idea, I always thought it would be kind of cool to use that totem pole idea to give the spirit of the returning person a physical representation of them in the present world. So maybe they aren't, maybe in this culture they don't come back as spirits and ghosts. Maybe they come back as like um I don't know, giant ravens or elementals or something like that. So you don't have to use the same old um, undead stat blocks, undead tropes, or anything. Yeah, you say that. Dropping acid in graveyards at night, going out on full moons, talking to owls and ravens. None of that shit fucking works, man. Sounds like a quote from a movie. I'm I'm thinking Big Lebowski. I don't know. Of course, we had the Viking funeral. Yeah. The Viking funeral. Viking funerals and burial rituals were affected by their pagan beliefs. Yeah, that's a little bit wrong. Let's say that they believed that death would lead them into an afterlife and into one of the 9 Viking realms. Because of this, they tried their hardest to send the deceased to a successful afterlife. They typically did this with either by cremation or inhumation. Inhumation. The funeral of a Viking chief or king was much more bizarre. According to an account of one such death ritual, I don't like the way this is worded. Um, a chief's body was placed in a temporary grave for 10 days while new clothes were being prepared for him. During this time, one of his thrall women had to volunteer herself to join the chief in the afterlife. She was then guarded day and night and given plenty of alcohol. Once the funeral ceremony started, she had to sleep with every man in the village. She was then strangled with a rope and finally stabbed by the village matriarch. The bodies of the chief and the woman were then placed on a wooden ship which served as the cremation pyre. Ooh, that sounds pretty. I guess that sounds pretty horrible. But we've seen. Ooh, ritual imitation. But we've seen the burning boat idea in media and such. Um, but yeah, ooh, ooh. Ritual finger amputation of the Dani people. Ouch. The Dani people of Papua New Guinea believe that physical representation of emotional pain is essential to the grieving process. A woman would chop off the tip of her finger if she lost a family member or a child. Ow. In addition to using pain to express sorrow and suffering, this ritual finger amputation was done to gratify and drive away the spirits as well. The Dani tribe believes that the essence of the deceased can cause lingering spiritual turmoil. This ritual is now banned, but evidence of the practice can still be seen in some of the older women of the community who have mutilated fingertips. What? I know the image is bizarre, but I this kind of thing, I hate to take other people's culture and use it as creative fuel, but I don't know, maybe there's a little bit of honor in there, in the sense of like, if a player character were to see this, maybe this individual is so honored among their people that they like there's true power in what they've done. It also is a representation of maybe this is how many people they've lost. So yeah, physical representations are also not terribly relevant uh, in my humble opinion. The dead should talk to us with our minds, man. Man, yes. I definitely agree with that. And but the physical representations, I mean, listen, it's a fantasy trope, right? The the magic sword usually comes from someone that has, given their life in battle, and it's given lots of power and such. Famadahana. Famadahana Drazana, also known as Famadi Fam Famadihana, is a ceremony that is used to honor the dead. It is the most commonly practiced traditional festival in the southern highlands of Madagascar. I bring up Madagascar every once in a while. It occurs every 7 years during winter in Madagascar from July to September. Tears and crying are banned, and the ceremony is seen as festive, unlike that of a burial. Tears and crying are banned. The ritual starts when the corpses are exhumed from their graves and rewrapped in new shrouds. Before the bodies are reinterred, they're hoisted up and carried around their tombs several times so that they can become familiar with their resting places. Famadihana also offers a chance for deceased family members to be reunited in one single family tomb. The celebration features loud music, dancing parties with lots of drink, and feasting. The last Fadihana was in 2011, which means the next one will probably start soon. Now, I like this idea where, like they say, every 7 years, this could be a gathering of people from a particular region in your world that come together. And this is a physical opening of the tomb and removing the body and wrapping and things. And like the stereotypical classic mummy, this might be a thing that the people are like happy to do for the deceased. Or maybe on this, like the Day of the Dead, hey, every 7 years, oh yeah, they come back, they're reanimated, everybody knows it, and they start having fun. And maybe the people are, maybe the so-called air quotes evil undead come back and they're like, I'm not trying to cause pain anything. I'm here to have some fun, right? I'm here to the wraiths and ghosts and vampires. I'm trying to think of some other undead that are out there, banshees or whatever, mummies out there. Maybe these are the people that they actually protect, and the 7 year ritual, if it starts to people start to forget it, maybe this is what makes evil undead, right? And when I say evil, it's definitely air quoted, where the undead might be acting out as opposed to consciously trying to cause harm. A lot of these rituals are, yeah, we want to make sure our loved ones pass on with joy and peace, and these are the things that have to be done, which is why maybe fantasy worlds aren't overrun with the undead, because people are doing these things. um, let's see. Hunt says the closest I ever came to a paranormal experience was getting schnockered on red wine on the beach at night in Kos, Greece during the blood moon. The red wine was key here. Hey, who knows? Who's to say that the certain libations at a particular time doesn't open up your mind to certain things? It could be on the Day of the Dead, and only certain people see or hear the presence of some of these beings. Of course, player characters being one of those, but maybe other people are like, I don't get it. You know how us old folks are. Young folks, they don't honor their elders. Drew says, for my Weitstance setting, I have the spiritual side of beings splitting into three aspects after death. That is a common thing amongst many cultures, where it's not just one. Christianity has kind of formulated like the single spirit concept. A person has a single soul, and it's body, soul, that's it, as opposed to having uh, different parts of them, right? The Ba, the Ka, what is the Egyptian? I'm going to have to look it up. The Where we each have our spirit split into sections, that maybe in a fantasy world, one of those spiritual parts might be just the pain, the anguish, the anger, their regrets, their guilt, and that becomes the stat block. We must slay that part of their spirit, kind of thing. Whereas the other part of their spirit might be the consciousness, the part that people love, the one that they're trying to protect, that goes off to the world of the deities of the multi-planes, planar existence and such. Yeah, who knows? Salankana, also known as Synthratha, is the last vow prescribed by the Jain ethical code of conduct. It is observed by Jain ascetics at the end of their life by gradually reducing the intake of food and liquids until they are fasting at the end. The practice is highly respected in the Jain or Jain community, Jain. The vow can only be taken voluntarily when death is near. Salekana can last up to 12 years, which gives the individual time to reflect back on life, purging old karmas and prevent the creation of new ones. Despite the controversy, the Supreme Court of India lifted the ban on Salankana in 2015. And I could see this kind of ritual happening, definitely in the idea of, air quotes, the good undead, spirits that still remain their lawful and or they're close to neutral and lawful and or good parts of their alignment, if you want to if you want to say that, right? These are the people. It's not really a death pat, right? It's more like they are ascending to becoming powerful individuals in this community, where even though we as players might look at it as stat blocks, for the people in the community, they're like, oh no, that's how they become like powerful ghosts and wizards and shadows and things like that. But it's because of these vows that once they pass on, it's like a normal transition. And the people are like, well, no, we respect them. We'll fight side by side with them, that kind of thing. We call upon we call upon the ones who've gone through the, I'm just making this up off the top of my, the 12 years of sacrifice or something. And once they've transitioned over, when they show up on the battlefield in front of the knights, they're like, hell yeah, we're gonna beat some ass this time. Or they might just be people who cure or save individuals, protecting them from famine and things like that. Zoroastrian Towers of Silence. This looks dark. A tower of silence, or dakma, is a funerary structure used by people of Zoroastrian faith. It is a practice of disposing of the dead by exposing the bodies to the sun and vultures. I've heard of this one. I did. The image didn't come to mind. According to Zoroastrian belief, the four elements, fire, water, earth, and air, are sacred and should not be polluted by the disposal of the dead through cremation and burial. In order to avoid polluting these elements, Zoroastrians expose the corpses to scavenging animals. Ah, see, this is where I've gotten it from. The towers of silence are raised platforms with three concentric circles within them. The bodies of men are arranged on the outer circle, those of women in the middle, and those of children in the inner circle. The vultures can then come to eat their flesh. The remaining bones are left to be dried and bleached by the sun before being deposited in a ossuary. Ossuary. These towers can be found both in Iran and in India. That is also pretty interesting as well. Drew says the reason spark, which might manifest as ghosts. Okay, the reason spark, which might manifest as ghosts, the conscious spark, which unites with the divine, and the instinct spark, which is basically the life force that returns to the cycle of nature. And I love it all. What an interesting um, story hook for players to maybe have to somehow communicate with all three sparks to unlock some piece of evidence or knowledge, or unite all three, even though one or more of them may be hostile to what the player characters intend to do. It could be that the necromancers in this world really can, how do I say, someone wants to bring their loved one back to the living, and the only way to do it is to reunite the sparks. But an evil necromancer is using the power to hold or enslave or capture one form of the spark, and it can get two of them. But to get the third one, you got to eliminate the necromancer to to release them from the hold that they have to get all three united. Or it could be the opposite, right? They need to be separated. That's the whole point. That's why the people do this thing. And the fact that some can't pass on is where we maybe get like where is it? The instinct spark could create terrible storms or fires, things happening in nature, the dying of the harvest or something, and people, and maybe someone's like, yeah, old lady Rachel and old man Poindexter, if it wasn't for the fact that their spark couldn't pass on, we'd be having better times. And PCs are like, what are you talking about? Didn't they pass away? And they sure did, but that's their instinctual spark is still left behind. That's why we can't get any good wine and blah, blah, happening at the tavern, and the PCs have to go out there and solve the thing. Maybe they solve the thing by gathering um, uh, bits and pieces, feathers, trinkets, or something that belong to that person. That will then get this. I don't know. There's a gemstone, and the instinct spark goes into the gemstone when they solve that issue, and then they take that with them to the next location. Shy Squad. Does anybody have any advice on how to see a ghost or get visited by a demon, preferably Stolas? I don't know if anybody has any advice on that, or you might not want to follow the advice of the people who have anything to say about it. All right, we only got three more left. Skull Burial. All right, okay. Kiribati is an island nation in the Pacific Ocean. In present times, its people practice mostly Christian burials, but this was not always the case. Before the 19th century, they practiced what is called the skull burial, in which they kept the skull at home so that the native god could welcome the deceased spirit to the afterlife. After someone died, their body would stay at home for 3 to 12 days for people to pay their respects. I've heard of that. To make the body smell nice, they would burn leaves near it and put flowers in the corpse's mouth, nose, and ears. They could also rub the body with coconut and other scented oils. That's what I was thinking about the creation of mummies in other cultures and things, where the people were like, no, we want their bodies not to decay. A few months after the body was buried, Family members would dig up the grave and remove the skull, polish it, and display it in their home. The deceased widow or child would sleep and eat next to the skull and carry it with them wherever they went. They could also make necklaces out of the fallen teeth. After several years, they would rebury the skull. And I could see something like that being in a fantasy world where the people are, whether it's a small family or nobles or whatever, that the skull could be the place where they do talk to it and they do get answers back, and it does protect them if enough people gather together or they beseech the loved one from the afterlife and they come back, and the skull floats in the air and suddenly a body kind of like forms around it, or the spirit comes out of the skull and fights away the PCs because they are invading a location or whatever. Yeah, hell yeah. Heck, maybe there's people that leave the community and they're known for carrying around these skulls. And the people are real humble. They're like, it's not me, it's my loved one that I carry with me. I'm just the guardian. It's the player character that, like, it's the it's the character created, but the player knows what's going on, but the character doesn't. So yes, the character could be a seventh level cleric or something, but the character doesn't know that. The character's like, no, it's not me. It's the spirit that's in the skull that is the character. I'm just the shepherd of the thing, right? So yeah, I could see making a character like that. This one is called Hanging Coffins. People of the Igorot or Igoro tribe of Mountain Province in northern Philippines have been burying their dead in hanging coffins nailed to the sides of cliff faces for more than 2 millennia. They believe that moving the bodies of the dead higher up brings them closer to their ancestral spirits. Oh, yeah, I could see this definitely. Yeah, yeah, yeah. The corpses are buried in a fetal position as the Igoro or Igorot people believe that a person should leave the world the same way they entered it. Nowadays, younger generations adopt the more modern and Christian ways of life, so this ancient ritual is slowly dying out. Of course, they're all dying out. Sucks, but I this is definitely a fantastical thing that we as creatives could borrow from as a form of honor. Maybe this is why there's air elemental spirits that take to the sky or something. We were talking about what was the Day of Griffins and living in mountainsides, and maybe the people there, from the dwarven holds to the knights that ride on the backs of flying creatures and such. Hell yeah, why not? It brings them higher. Maybe the player characters are tasked with taking someone up there, or they are tasked with going up very high to speak with one of the spirits up there. But either one, I could see that. And last one we have here is Soku Shinbutsu. I'm butchering that as well. Many religions from around the world believe that an imperishable corpse conveys an ability to connect with a force beyond the physical realm. The Japanese Shingon monks of Yamagata took it a step further. Their practice of self mummification, or Tsukushimbatsu, was believed to grant them access to heaven, where they could live for 1,000,000 years and protect humans on Earth. The process of mummifying themselves from inside out required utmost devotion and self discipline. The process of here we go. Soko Shinbutsu started off with the monk adopting a diet consisting of only tree roots, barks, nuts, berries, pine needles, and even stones. This diet helped eliminate any fat and muscle as well as bacteria from the body. It could last anywhere from 1,000 to 3,000 days. The monk would also drink the sap of the Chinese uh, lacquer tree, which would render the body toxic to insect invaders after death. The monk continued with the meditation practice while drinking only small amounts of salinized water. As death approached, he would rest in a small, tightly cramped pine box, which would be buried. The corpse would then be unearthed after 1,000 days. If the body had stayed intact, it meant that the deceased had become Soko Shinbutsu. The body would then be dressed in robes and put in a temple for worship. The whole process could take more than 3 years to complete. It is believed that 24 monks successfully mummified themselves between 1081 and 1903, but this ritual was criminalized in 1877. Wow. Okay. Very, very interesting. And I love the idea of like taking some of these as well. What do you guys have to say? Sorry, sorry, sorry. There we go. Drew says, "I'm glad that you got the idea of my sparks." Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I never claimed that I was pretty smart. It's you guys that do this kind of thing. So yeah, that's not me. That's you. Yeah, I get the idea. The minute you placed it in there, I was like, oh yeah, I see what you're saying. I love it, and I like the idea of using that. Your sparks sparked something in me to make me think like, man, there's a lot of story here. There's quite a bit of that. Hell, you could have a player character that like their air quotes power comes from one of the sparks, and they are on a mission to reunite the other sparks, essentially giving up their player character's abilities. But that's the mission, right? It's, hey, listen, I'm just a shepherd for this spirit, and I'm just moving along, and it's helping me get to this other. I'm just here to view the experiences of or protect the spirit physically as I reconnect. But once I get to 20th level, I will lose all my abilities because they're not my abilities. They belong to somebody else, right? What a great mission. Mike Marin says, fighting a bunch of summoned skeletons on rickety coffins hanging off a cliff face sounds epic. Oh, hell yeah. That I was thinking about the same thing. Like, wait a minute, how do you get to the coffins if they're holy shit? Like, right? What a great idea, especially if you can't just, player characters are destructive, right? Why don't we just blast a fireball and knock them down? But what if you have to climb up there to retrieve a specific physical item? Or, strapped on the characters' backs is the coffin. Oh no, we've already put up the pegs. You just have to take it up there. And the PCs are like, what? We got to free climb this thing? The dwarves are like, what are you, chicken? Buck, 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 buck. Yeah, I love that. Fighting summon skeletons rising from the coffins on a cliff face. Yeah, hells yeah. Ever seen a walled up monk skeleton in real life? Never have. Never have. But that's my point, right? Like we have lots of real world examples, and not for us to disrespect the death rights of other people, but hell, we do it with our own selves. And as you notice, even from me reading that list, there's a lot of Christianity has taken over from older things. So using the four elements, using heights, we what's the damn my brain just House of the Dragon. Woo, it hasn't even been that long. House of the Dragon. We got to see the death rites of the people that are like, no, we put our dead in crypts down in the water, right? We're having a funeral on the ocean side, on a in the bay, on the coastline, and we lower the crypts down into the water. So imagine having to swim down into the depths of a bay where they bury the dead in these concrete styled marble carved crypts, and the undead start rising out of the water, and the PCs are like, so I had to take all my armor off, and I didn't think I need to have a water breathing type spell, and I've got a dagger in my teeth and a javelin in my hand, and the undead are trying to grab me and drag me down here. uh Brown pants, anyone? Right. Shai says there are lots of crypts in Europe that are full of walled up monk skeletons. The Cappuccino monks were into that. I did not know that. I did not know that. But yes, there are, yeah, water skeleton crypts that probably exist in real life too. Yeah. Why wouldn't people do that? And especially where you live, right? A lot of death rites are if we really think about it, a lot of these death rites are built around what we culturally see all the time, either protecting people from the very dangers that exist in the world. So if you exist in a place, I'm just making this up off the top of my head. Let's say you exist in a place with volcanoes. Well, why wouldn't people want to, say, drop their dead into the volcano to assuage the volcanic uh, elemental being that lives there? Or maybe it's the opposite. It's like, we don't want them to die in a volcano. We're going to take them far away. We're going to place them in water because that's the safest place, right? Yeah, I mean, and all kinds of things. A lot of us, we either like to challenge the very things that can destroy us to gain dominance over it, or we want to escape it. So why do you think we've why do you think um, dogs and cats have been domesticated, right? They're some pretty harmful and dangerous predators, and what did we do? We dominated it. But life and death is the same way. And for adventuring, while it's very dangerous and very common in RPGs for us to fight against the hordes of the undead. Uh, Undead are evil, mindless things that come after us. We're heroes. We're big bad heroes. We need to destroy them. But there's some middle ground in there. And when I say middle ground, I'm not saying that we can't have ourselves a good old fun murder kill kind of adventure. What I'm saying is those adventure hooks could be given to us by the undead themselves. You know, going back to what Drew has mentioned about the different sparks of the spirit, one spark could be saying, listen, I need you to destroy the physical embodiment of my other spark because it's out of control and I need to reunite myself with it, right? And it could be, or the classic warriors of the dead in a big field where maybe there were no death rights given over these warriors. And the population is like, listen, our job is to make sure that we rest the spirits of all of our people. And we never got to this one area, and we need protection to get there by the player characters to use the rites and say goodbye. But before they get there, the undead rise and the battle starts again. And the PCs are like, what are we supposed to do? And the death riders are like, keep fighting them until we can get this ritual done. And the PCs, ching, ching, ching. How long is that? Ching, ching, ching. Till you get your experience points, right? Like, I mean, I'm being pretty silly with that. But yeah, talking about buried monks in the walls in Europe and such. Maybe it okay. Two step challenge. One, evil spirits circling around because their bodies are buried in the walls. Evil spirits attacking PCs, running, fighting, needing to hide, needing to assuage, exorcism, blah blah blah. But how do you do it? Well, we literally have to fight through the spirits to get to the physical location, wherever that is, behind a wall, take the wall down, find the spirit back there who then might be physically animated, and then trying to combine the two, right? Or going back to the broken, separated spirits of individuals, the the there we can make ourselves some really excellent BFF monsters, creatures, combatants. So the physical body, we pick something that represents the physical body. Mummy, vampire, skeleton, zombie. I can't think, for some reason, I can't think of, is a wraith or no, is a white a physical, one of those is physical, ghouls, right? So you got the physical embodiment. Now, the secondary part is like the spirit that floats around them. And the spirit is like swirling around. It could be an environmental effect. It could be a ghost or a banshee or specter or shadow or something like that. Um, oh, thanks. Yeah, 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 yeah. Um, and yeah, whites are physical. I feel so funny. Sorry, this is just a side note. And I know people out there because I'm saying it so you guys don't have to say it. I feel so funny saying whites because we know that it is WIGHTS, a monster. Um, let's see. We know it's a monster, but it just it just rolls off the tongue a little bit strange. Yeah, I've got some images up here. Maybe I'll throw them. Yeah, I'll share them out there. Right. And then the wraiths are the non-corporeal ones, right? Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, okay, so the BFF creatures. So you have the physical embodiment, you have the spiritual embodiment, like their spirit separated, kind of not together, but still them kind of thing. What's a third one? A third one could be elemental. A third one, like Drew says, instinctual, could be elemental-ish. Winds, fire, plants, stone, animated armor, who knows, or weapon or something, right? The Virgin White and the Chad Wraith. Yeah, yeah, hell yeah, yeah. The Virginal White and the Chad. Why not a betrothed couple? Shouldn't have been together. The population of the village and the nobles said this marriage should never happen. And 201, they came upon um just before the cleric was to place them in holy matrimony. They were snatched away from each other, and either side murder killed them at where they stood. And 1,001 years later, they've risen again. Her, you know, her physical embodiment, still in her tattered wedding dress, grabbing the weapons of her dead betrothed, and him, floating spiritual around her, wanting to embrace her but could never, literally flowing through her body. Both of them wanting to take revenge on the village down below and the nobles above in the castle on the hill or something. Yeah, right. No, now I can guarantee you, I'm butchering the consensual punctuation, but yeah. White comes from the German Weich, an old word for entity, and Lich is also a word from German Lick, literally corpse. And I've heard it should be pronounced lick, whatever. And I'm just like, whatever. In our fantasy game, that's the proper pronunciation. It's like the difference between a valet and a valet, right? Valet is one thing, a valet is another thing, despite them being spelled the same. What was the Dungeon Dragons explain the difference between sigil and sigil? That sigil is a certain thing, and sigil is a place, and they're not necessarily related. Mike Miller says there's a trope of a living dungeon, such as being inside a giant dragon, but what about inside a catacomb with monks buried in the walls, arms reaching out to grab you, skulls shooting fire beams? Hell yeah! And I love environmental challenges. I love the idea of like stone walls with holes in them, where like the bricks are falling out and there's arms reaching out, or like literal locked dungeon gates with the undead that have been like chained up, or they're behind gated walls, bars, and they're reaching out. And imagine the players have to. You can't be grabbed if you stay on a narrow path, but anyone, good guy or bad guy, that gets pushed off the narrow path can get grabbed and their flesh ripped open and their belongings snatched from them and stuff. I love that. Hey, you got grappled on the wall, and now the bad guy, I don't know, the gnolls or something, are going to stab you, whatever. Yeah. Juden says the German word, is it Weich? Is still common in. You're gonna make me butcher this. Okay, in Bossweich, which is German word for villain. Ooh. Shai says, yeah, pronounce it however. I just thought the German etymology might be interesting to you. These are real words, not made up fantasy names. Yes, exactly, right? Like listen, the vast majority of Dungeons and Dragons was made up of basically a bunch of geeky people. Dave Arneson and the rest of them were like, hey, what's a cool thing from, go to encyclopedia, search for thing, and then made it become um, a fantasy trope, like elves and goblins, right? We done D20 fantasy elves and goblins are different than mythological elves and goblins, and we've just like the glommed. Listen, here in the States, we love to glom ourselves onto things and throw them together, which is kind of it. Like for us geeky gamers, we're the only ones that have different classifications. Like, well, a wraith is different than a ghost, which is different than a banshee, whereas people who aren't in the gaming sphere are like, isn't that exactly the same thing? You're like, no. See, one yells and screams and kills you, making your eyes and ears bleed. Now, the other one actually touches you and drains your life, but they're not the same as the ghost is different than the shadow. See, the shadow is like this black and inky like thing that flows along walls, but it does the same thing because it tries to grab you. But it's different than a ghoul, which actually eats dead flesh, which is different than a zombie. See, zombies want to eat you and rend your flesh, but they really don't get any power from it. Whereas ghouls kind of breed to get, and by that time we explain all that, other people are like, their eyes are like glossing over and they're just like, could you please shut up? French toast. Um, yeah, and you guys being overseas know a lot better, especially about this stuff, the etymology, the history of these things more so. And we have plenty of role playing games that are and role playing game supplements that are going back in time and going, you know what? We should make like a monster manual ish kind of thing based on the origins of that thing rather than our current kind of watered down fantasy tropish aspect of it. And there's lots of games out there. Off the top of my head, I can't start naming them all because if I start naming one, I have to start naming all of them, and it's very different. But you guys probably know them. Yeah, Geist. Today they would probably just be, say, Geist or Gospenster. Yep, 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 yep. Yeah, Drew says, yeah, originally zombies didn't eat people. That is Hollywood again. Yep, since in voodoo the zombies simply didn't had been that way. Yeah, they were um 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 Hollywood brought about there's an old movie where the zombified people just kept saying brains, brains. It was a B movie. And from that point, it was like, oh, people were like, duh. No wonder the zombies are attacking. They just want brains rather than rending flesh. To an even more modern thing, they are disease carriers. So they want to bite people to infect them to continue the zombie virus, right? So if you want to take that from Hollywood, the Hollywoodization of zombies, that conceptually we're bringing them into disease carriers, which circling this back around to the Day of the Dead, the the people themselves this may be a festivity, a celebration, a holiday, a day that everyone goes, listen, all the issues that we have in our society, or many of those issues, harvest, weather, bad luck, um, terrible memories, harmful behaviors, whatever the case may be. On the Day of the Dead, they could be beseeching the ones who have passed for knowledge for present day. Hey, how did you build those great temples? Hey, undead family members, could you explain to us? Like, I'm glad you asked. It's been 7 years. Now, let me explain how we did this, right? It could be knowledge based. It could be here's how not to die from famine for the next couple of seasons. Or, hey, we are undead spirits and we've been able to see things that you've never been able to see. We can't give you all of our knowledge because we'll just burn your brain out. But here's a little bit that we can share with you. Or it could be, listen, we're not supposed to be here, but since we're from the afterlife, psst, we're going to give you this knowledge. Now we can only stay here for about 24 hours, but after that we got to go. Right? It could be dark knowledge, or it could just be having fun. Uh, why why is it that the undead never attack the people in the north? Maybe because they just have a good relationship with them, right? Voodoo, yeah. Oh, yes. Let's talk about voodoo. Maybe that's the way for us to get a paranormal experience. Get in the trance, and the Lawa will possess you. Yeah. Let me see. What's a good thing? Uh, Voodoo and hoduns and voodoo and images and things like that. Who? Yeah, yeah. And if I'm not mistaken, um, there are many cultures that consider there are many cultures that consider famous people who have passed as a pantheon unto themselves. So great warriors, teachers, um, oracles, shaman, um, whatever the case may be. matrons of the community. Like you could make up, say, 3 to 10 of them, 3 to 12. You make up a bunch of them, and they all represent an issue society would have: economics, famine, disease, war, family, the hearth, whatever, harvest, things like that. And but these were real people, like not gods, but these were people that really did exist. Yeah, right, Drew. Exactly. Catholics have their saints, and I think most world cultures have this concept of real people who did real things that were exceptional, or they passed away in a uh, dramatic fashion. They gave of themselves, they sacrificed themselves, they stood for things that went above and beyond for the pale. And then they become saints spiritual. They go out. Maybe the Day of the Dead brings them back, or they come back on the Day of the Dead and it's up to us, like, oh, did we live up to their standards? Right? Or when they come back on the Day of the Dead, it means that there's this problem exists on the horizon. So, for example, let's say there was a matron mother, and there was a woman that took care of the birthing of children in a community, and she gave birth and helped to birth and save the lives of 273 of them. And when she comes back, she will come back for 273 days. That's it. That's it. And upon each child she sees, she will maybe lay her hand upon their head to bless them. Exactly 273 children or whatever. And everyone's like, I hope she comes to my house. People come far and wide. Hey, she may be here. And she doesn't have to look like rickety, old, scary spirit or something. Maybe she's just like a very almost celestial in her appearance, right? I'm You can tell I'm coming up with this Catholic Mother of Teresa type imagery, right? But this person could be real. They're not a deity. They may have this person may not even have extreme awareness of all things. They're just like, listen, I'm just here to protect the kids. And the PCs might be like, hey, guess what? When we go into the dungeon and save the kids, we can give the kids to her, and she protects them so we can keep going adventuring. And she's like, no, I'll watch them. And I mean, why not? Now singing when the saints come marching in. Yeah, maybe they do come a marching in, right? And so we could pull a lot of these things where undead and evil and spirits and stuff. We don't have to pigeonhole them into one section. Maybe there's a reason for it, and this is very trope breaking, even though in our own culture, from around the world, we're literally looking at cultures from around the world. We are breaking tropes themselves, like the Day of the Dead, where people are dressing up and painting their faces and having festival, and other people are like, why aren't you? This is supposed to be serious. We're supposed to be crying. We're supposed to veil our faces and stuff. And that's not the same. That's not the way it is everywhere. Of course, we didn't even bring up fey creatures and stuff. Shice is stillborn children. I'm afraid that's a real way to get a paranormal experience. One of our old friends from the RPG Brigade has experience with that. Really? Ooh. And I remember the old RPG Brigade. Ooh. Wow. But yes, I believe there's a Piers Anthony book from the Incarnations of Immortality. Incarnations of Immortality. What's the name of the very first book? On a Pale Horse. That was written about the loss of, I believe, his child or someone he knew. Yeah. On a Pale Horse. But all right, guys, going a little bit late. Thank you very much for being part of the show. So sorry to hear that about one. I did not know that. But yes, talking about the Day of the Dead, this is a great way for us to challenge our preconceptions or notions about cultures and things in the world, and then go, maybe we can flip things around in a different way. An example, one that I'm pulling out of my ass is maybe there's a day where the nobility walk amongst the people, and the people are treated like nobles, and the nobility pulls off their fine robes and things, and they walk barefoot with you know, dingy canvas burlap sacks. And that could be a normal thing. And PCs are like, why? The people could just murder kill the nobles, but maybe the reason that the nobles do this in the first place is the reason why they are honored, and the player characters may be thinking in their heads like, well, wow, this is really different. Maybe they should embrace this where I come from, you know? Hell, maybe they should embrace that today. Looking at you, politicians, right? So we can learn a lot from this. Thank you very much for letting me just uh, psycho vomit on the interwebs. This day of series, if you like this, please like, share, subscribe, let people know about the channel, join in live if you can, even though I know here in the States it's pretty difficult to do that, but catch it on later. And Shay says, thanks for the show, DBJ. The Day of Dead is the perfect way to get this new arbitrary fraction of eternity. Missed it. Off to a great start. Our simple fraction of eternity. Hebs, I kind of like it. I kind of like it. Anyway, guys, have a great one. I'll see you later. Thanks for spending your valuable time with me. I love it.